Russian soldiers have problems with assembling ammunition because drones see everything. This video serves as confirmation of those words. Right now, you're seeing a building where Russian military personnel are located, as well as the place where they decided to store ammunition. Without hesitation, the drone was directed towards it. Look at the powerful explosion. There's nothing left of the building. In these shots, a similar situation unfolds, but in a different location. The drone hits the ammunition. The detonation doesn't happen immediately, but look. After some time, the detonation occurs. The roof shatters in different directions, giving the impression as if it's made of cardboard. Ukrainian military discovered a depot of anti-tank mines and immediately dispatched an FPV drone to destroy them. As seen, there wasn't a grand detonation, but the mission was accomplished. By the way, credit should be given to the Russians in this case. They didn't store them directly at their temporary location. By the number of vehicles destroyed by FPV drones, the destruction of heavy machinery predominates for now. However, other types of equipment are also being actively targeted: logistics and various fortifications. Look as the operator skillfully guides the drone into a small crevice, after which the Russian bunker explodes. One of the greatest advantages of FPV drones is their price. For example, this is the Russian multiple rocket launcher system, TOS-1A Solntsepek, which fires thermobaric projectiles. The cost of this installation is $15 million. See what happens to it when it's detected by a Ukrainian FPV drone, which costs $500. It transforms into a fireball, and after detonation, there's nothing left of it. However, the Ukrainian military did not relent and directed a drone, which successfully threw a grenade into the open hatch. It explodes, and the tank starts burning from the inside. Eventually, the fire completely engulfs the tank, and after some time, nothing is left of it. This is a recent attempt at an assault in the Donetsk region, where light armored vehicles with infantry symbolically move past the graveyard. They attempt to bypass the already destroyed infantry vehicle, but encounter a mine and meet the same fate as artillery begins to target them. On the adjacent street nearby, FPV drones are actively targeting another assault group. An attempt to break through to the Ukrainian positions has been thwarted. This tank crew is attempting to retreat. Look at how kamikaze drones hit this Russian tank one after another. In panic, it rotates its turret, but it got lucky. It did not sustain critical damage and did not detonate. However, luck didn't favor the crew in the next video, events of which unfold in the same frontline area. Amidst the fields, there was plenty of work left for the drone operator. The Russians left behind a lot of equipment. The drone selects a target and skillfully tosses a grenade into an open hatch, causing a fire. After some time, as a result, there is such a powerful detonation that it blows it into small pieces. Just watch. Its turret flies up tens of meters high. At the spot where the tank stood, there was nothing left but smoldering pieces of metal. The drone operator throws a grenade at the tank nearby. In this case, the tank's turret remained in place, but the burning process was accompanied by a stunning fireworks display caused by the detonation. In the end, this tank also turned into a charred piece of metal. However, not only military equipment suffers from Ukrainian FPV drones. Machinery without humans is worthless. Also, important targets are communication and surveillance assets. They often become targets for Ukrainian FPV drones, and operators detect and destroy them in various locations. This drone was equipped with a shaped charge projectile. They attach such a projectile to the drone. This drone is interesting because it has a self-guidance function. Ukrainian military sent several of these drones, which successfully struck the Russian tank. Generally, such projectiles are used for firing RPG-7s. But in modern combat scenarios, it is often attached to an FPV drone due to its small weight, ranging from 2 to 4 kilograms, and its powerful explosive properties. Considering this, the Russians started attaching such nets to the rear of motorcycles. In practice, this is unlikely to help them save lives from the cumulative jet capable of penetrating tank armor. Recently, another modern T-90M tank was spotted and destroyed. After the initial drone strike, the tank veers off the road onto the roadside. After some time, another kamikaze drone attacks it, and then another one. Eventually, after a series of drone attacks on the tank, there is no detonation of the ammunition and no grand destruction. However, the Russians are unlikely to be able to evacuate it for further repair. The Russian tank is moving across an open field, with a Ukrainian drone observing it. Another drone has been dispatched to destroy enemy equipment. It hits the rear of the tank, causing a fire that forces the crew to stop. A decision is made to send another drone, but something goes wrong, and it misses the tank. The operator observing what is happening notices electronic warfare countermeasures, which most likely saved the tank from the second hit. Here's another Russian MLRS moving along the street amidst the rubble of destroyed buildings. The drone strike hits directly on the ammunition load. Judging from the explosion, it was fully stocked. No less important is the task drones perform, destroying disabled vehicles to prevent their evacuation for repair and subsequent redeployment on the battlefield. In this video, 2 Russian tanks with mine-clearing devices detonated on mines during another unsuccessful assault. The first drone hit the right tank, inflicting serious damage. The second drone hit the tank on the left, causing it to catch fire. After some time, this led to the detonation of the ammunition load and the destruction of both tanks. This T-80 tank is firing at the positions of Ukrainian military personnel. Several drones were sent to destroy it, one of which was equipped with a shaped charge projectile. Unfortunately, the detonation did not occur. Another T-72 tank arrived to evacuate it. The drone began to pursue them and struck the engine of the leading tank, forcing them to stop. The crew abandoned the vehicle. Then there was another series of strikes, resulting in one tank catching fire, and after some time, it was completely destroyed. This is the forest in the Luhansk region. Aerial reconnaissance hit an armored infantry vehicle with an FPV drone, while an enemy tank equipped with electronic warfare capabilities detonated on a mine laid by sappers. The equipment was targeted with FPV strikes, loaded with ammunition, enabling it to effectively seize and clear this area of electronic warfare interference. Ukrainian FPV drones inflict damage not only on stationary targets, such as this 122mm howitzer, the D-30. Thanks to their skill, drone operators, sitting in protected locations, destroy Russian equipment in motion on its mission. Also, in conjunction with artillery, they halt massive mechanized assaults. For example, such intensive offensive actions by the Russians are conducted near the village of Novomikhailivka. Thanks to the coordinated work of artillery and drones, the outskirts of the village are turned into a graveyard of equipment.
Let's see how the Shark UAV corrects HIMARS strikes. The first and second targets are Masta B howitzers. Ukrainians have detected a complex of electronic warfare, Svet KU. The HIMARS received the coordinates. A fragmentation shell perforated the Russian complex. Wonderful! Want to see something pretty unusual and extremely rare? Watch closely. A tank duel at a distance of no more than 10 meters. This is a Ukrainian tank, and on the other side are Russian terrorists. The Ukrainians load another shell and shoot at the Russian tank once again. Let's look from a different angle. We see the smoke after the first hit. The Russian tank is torn from the shot at point-blank range. Such episodes deserve separate likes and comments. The Russians drove this trough into position. The drone will make it impossible for them to move out of those positions, and the artillery will finish the job. Nice footage. 4 Soviet pieces of shit. By the way, the drone shows that the cars have Russian license plates. The FPV works on the first 2 cars. Excellent. The second drone reaches the remaining targets. Another garbage truck. The Russians tried to hide it, but failed. Oh, great. A Buhanka car. How many of them have already been destroyed in Ukraine? The drone crashes clearly into the windshield, but the most interesting thing happens after. the car begins to roll back. Minus a modern tank with modern defense, soldiers of the 11th Brigade of the NGU destroyed the newest Russian T-90 Proryev tank in Kherson region. The aerial reconnaissance team delivered a precise fire attack on the enemy tank, after which the ammunition detonated and the explosion tore off the turret. The Ukrainians had their own plans for this Russian T-80. An FPV drone hit it in its most vulnerable part. A massive explosion. The turret flies into the sky like a tin can. On the second angle, you can clearly see how high it was thrown. Russian artillerymen are having a terrible day. They were caught in the lens of a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone. The drone followed the artillery and corrected a kamikaze drone strike. The entire crew landing from a hit self-propelled artillery. By the way, as the Ukrainians joked, this is the first unmanned Russian SPA. It continued to drive until it hit an anti-tank ditch, where it was overtaken by another kamikaze drone. And these are two very expensive Buk M3 air defense systems. Uncle HIMARS came to visit. These shots here show more than $100 million being turned into scrap metal in mere seconds. These Russian Buk SAMs are very unlucky. People's reconnaissance drone Shark corrects the strikes of the HIMARS. Two serious Buk complexes are destroyed at once in one salvo. No luck for the Buhonks today. The drone hits its target and destroys it. A passenger car approaches one of the buildings. The Russians are using it to move between combat positions. This couldn't last long. A Ukrainian drone deprives the Russians of transportation. The Avdiivka region. The Russians are using heavy flamethrower systems, Soint-Sepyok, for strikes on AFU positions. I think you all recognized its silhouette in the footage. Not only that, this system costs $15 million. Naturally, to hit it with a kamikaze drone is great luck, which is exactly what happens in this video. Now all we have to do is watch the flamethrower system explode into pieces. Hide it or don't hide it, the reckoning will come. The Buhanka was perfectly camouflaged, but that didn't save it. A drone flies over the building and destroys the Russian car. Russian soldiers are emotionally discussing something. A car is standing next to them. It's also a long-suffering Buhanka. A kamikaze drone burns it too. The Russians are covered by TOS Soint-Sepyok. Ukrainian artillery hits it. Another target of the artillerymen becomes the Masta SSPA. At such moments, I realize how resilient and courageous Ukrainians are. Just imagine, you get a report that 90 pieces of equipment are moving towards you. And in addition, it is covered by artillery, aviation, and such complexes as the Soint-Sepyok. The Ukrainians successfully repelled the attack. This footage confirms my words. The scattered Russian soldiers were hit by HIMARS, and the occupants were hit with a rain of tungsten balls. This footage shows the Russians preparing and moving in for the assault. A few hours later, a Ukrainian drone captures this video. The Russian tanks are destroyed, and the assault has failed. And to completely upset the Russians, the Ukrainians launch several kamikaze drones and blow up a tank. One of such attacks near Vuhledar had such consequences. The video shows 9 armored vehicles hit. Electronic warfare, Lear 2, based on the armored vehicle Tiger. A powerful artillery strike doesn't give it a chance. Shark UAV and Ukrainian artillery. This footage shows a Russian Strela 10 SAM system. Moments later, a Ukrainian artillery shell arrives and destroys the SAM. Good work. A similar situation. The Shark UAV is watching the Russian troops. At this point, the Ukrainians are identifying targets to strike. Everything is ready. The artillery begins its work. The Ukrainians are hitting the buildings where the enemy is hiding. It ends with the Russians defeated. The Ukrainians continue to please with high-quality videos using kamikaze drones. Let's take a look at this one. The Bakhmut region. The first victim is a Buk M3 SAM system. The Ukrainians are using 2 drones to destroy it. The cost of such a complex is about $300 million. The second target the Ukrainians hit is a T-72 tank. The third and the fourth T-80 tanks. Very fruitful endeavors. Another expensive complex among the destroyed Russian systems is the Tor SAM system. The cost of this one is $24 million. The second drone leaves no chance of saving the system. Nicely done. In this video, a Russian armored group moved in for the assault. Several dozen tanks and armored personnel carriers are moving to meet their doom. At one point, more than 89 units of Russian equipment were identified. The task of the column was to break through the defense and achieve operational success. In other words, to capture Avdiivka. At some point, the Russians split up and went from several directions at once in this section. It all looked very threatening, but in reality, everything turned out quite differently. The beginning of the attack. Russian tanks are firing at the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces under the cover of a forest belt. Ukrainian artillery begins to strike to stop the column. As we can see, it's paying off. The Russians begin to suffer heavy losses. The assault stops. Russian self-propelled artillery Masta S made a real kaboom. Take a look. A kamikaze drone hits it in the turret. Russian SPAs also have ammunition and gunpowder stacked inside. This is the reason why there was such a powerful explosion. It's a Nona S, and it was preventing Ukrainian infantry from advancing. Well, for every bad Russian, the Ukrainians have an FPV drone. Kaboom! The ammunition ignites instantly. The mortar is blown to bits. Another column of Russian vehicles. They're trying to break through to a strategic point. Will they succeed? We're about to find out. The Ukrainians have mined all the roads and put their artillery on the path of the Russian column. When the first tank explodes, they open fire with all their guns and begin to smash the Russian troops. A powerful explosion rips the Russian tank apart. The surviving Russian soldiers try to retreat the next day, but the Ukrainians do not give them the opportunity. Dozens of tanks were sent to slaughter by the Russian generals. This assault turned into a shooting, as in a shooting gallery. At first, the Ukrainians, using artillery and other means, knocked out the bulk of the vehicles, and the soldiers who survived later were destroyed by drones and artillery fire. Aerial reconnaissance detects a Russian column. The coordinates are immediately transmitted to the command center, and preparations for defense begin. The column is within range of kamikaze drones and artillery. The Ukrainians begin opening fire. The Kharkiv region. Events are developing near the village of Novotarasivka. Ukrainians have detected a Sointsepiok. A kamikaze drone manages to hit the target before it gets too far away. Can anyone explain in the comments why there was no explosion? The Russian APC has hesitated. A fatal mistake. The drone at least deprived the armored personnel carrier of its main armament, but probably even destroyed the vehicle. The Russians were planning to attack Ukrainian positions, but these plans were not destined to come true. After the drone dives into the side of the armored personnel carrier, a powerful explosion is heard. This is the ammunition that the Russians planned to deliver to the Ukrainian positions together with the infantry. The Russian infantry probably made a fatal mistake. Try to relate what you see next to why I said that. The Russians tried to camouflage this BMP, but it didn't work. A reconnaissance drone detected the target, and a kamikaze drone eliminated it. Excellent! Well-coordinated work by Ukrainian operators. A forest belt. There are Russian positions inside. A truck for soldiers is standing next to it. While the Russians are sitting in the trenches and discussing something scary NATO, a Ukrainian drone flies to their transport. They quickly realize that now they will not be able to leave their position safely and quickly. Ukrainians fired a missile at Russian soldiers. A powerful explosion turns the truck into a burning pile of garbage. The cameraman of this video was incredibly lucky, and now you'll see why. If the missile had traveled a little slower, either he would have lost his head, or the AFV that he's sitting on to shoot the video would have turned into a meat pot. The Ukrainians actively used ATGMs, including the FGM-148 Javelin. Oh, how I love to watch this video. The Russians arrived in position, but an unexpected plot twist awaited them. Enjoy this fire show.
There was excellent news from the Lugansk direction, namely fighters of the Sharp Kartazy unit showed the moment how a Ukrainian FPV kamikaze drone strikes a moving Russian car near the village of Regorivka, Lugansk region. It is reported that fighters of the Ukrainian armed forces showed a video shot by two unmanned aerial vehicles, namely an observer and the kamikaze drone itself. First, FPV footage of a kamikaze drone is shown, which first circles in order to subsequently strike a Russian car directly in the side near the passenger seat and engine. It then shows pre-death footage of the drone itself, where the drone is seen getting close enough and the video ends abruptly, indicating that the drone exploded. From another camera, we can see the FPV drone strike from a different angle, which stopped the Russian car, and at the moment of defeat it flared up like a match. There was excellent news from the Donetsk direction. Namely, the Ukrainian ones showed the moment of destruction of the enemy BIM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system and the moment of detonation of ammunition from the damaged equipment of the Russian occupiers. It is reported that fighters of the Ukrainian armed forces have introduced an innovative approach using FPV kamikaze drones to accurately destroy enemy equipment. Multiple launch rocket systems such as Grad pose a serious threat to Ukrainian troops, especially when they actively attack positions and fortified areas. However, thanks to the actions of soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces and the use of an FPV kamikaze drone, it was possible to accurately neutralize this threat. The video shot by an unmanned aerial vehicle demonstrates the moment of impact on the Grad rocket system, which resulted in powerful explosions, scattering of shells, and the complete destruction of enemy equipment. The FPV drone operator demonstrated a high level of skill in adjusting the fire and achieving a precise hit, which led to catastrophic consequences for enemy equipment and crew. This episode also highlights the importance of intelligence work and coordination among various military units to effectively counter enemy threats. The fighters of the Shadow unit showed the moment how a Ukrainian FPV drone strikes a Russian T-72 B-3M tank and its crew in the vicinity of the village of Teninkoi, Donetsk region. It is reported that fighters of the Ukrainian armed forces showed a video shot by two unmanned aerial vehicles, namely an observer and the FPV drone itself. First, footage is shown of a Russian tank driving through an open area, and at that moment, the Ukrainian FPV drone flies into it. But the consequences of the blows turned out to be insignificant, so she continued moving. Then the second FPV drone makes a new approach, but this time it is more successful and safely hits the gas tanks behind the Russian tank. As a result, the Russian tank drove a few more meters by inertia and started to catch fire. Next, using an ordinary civilian drone, a grenade was dropped into the tank's hatch, as a result of which the entire crew of the tank was safely eliminated from the explosion and scattering of fragments inside the tank's cabin. As a result, the Russian tank drove a few more meters by inertia and started to catch fire. Next, using an ordinary civilian drone, a grenade was dropped into the tank's hatch, as a result of which the entire crew of the tank was safely eliminated from the explosion and scattering of fragments inside the tank's cabin. there has been excellent news from the Donetsk direction, namely a video shot by a Ukrainian drone of the 47th Mechanized Brigade vividly describes the intense military operations unfolding in the village of Berdichi, Donetsk region. At the beginning of the video, we see how Russian armored vehicles ran into an anti-tank mine a couple of minutes earlier. As a result, the movement of the equipment was stopped, and the crew was stunned and still in the armored vehicle. Further, when Russian equipment comes under attack from Ukrainian drones, the situation quickly escalates. As a result, Russian armored vehicles are hit in the front by an FPV drone. Although the first strike by the Ukrainian FPV drone did not immediately bring a strong effect, the Ukrainian military decided to launch a second attack on the same armored vehicle. This time, the blow is more effective. This episode highlights the precision and effectiveness of Ukrainian drone technology targeting enemy critical locations. The result of these attacks was a powerful explosion that engulfed the Russian armored vehicle in flames. There was excellent news from the Zaporozhye direction, namely, fighters of the aerial reconnaissance unit of the 3rd Operational Brigade Spartan showed the moment of destruction of the Russian self-propelled artillery unit Pion, which was firing at the positions of the Ukrainian military. It is reported that, with the help of reconnaissance, the location of the enemy self-propelled artillery unit Pion was established, which fired at a firing position and tried to hide in one of the forest plantations in the Zaporozhye region. As a result of the adjustments and the provided target designations, the defense forces fired at the target using the HIMARS multiple launch rocket system. As a result of the strike, the enemy's self-propelled artillery installation was successfully destroyed. It is obvious that the Ukrainian military delivered the first strike with very high surgical precision, and as a result, the shell fell directly on a Russian self-propelled artillery installation and completely destroyed it. Judging by the explosion and scattering of debris, it looks like the Ukrainian military used a GPS guided projectile, or rather GMLRS. The price of this projectile can be very high, but the advantage that the Ukrainian army receives from these strikes and saved lives, as practice shows, is priceless.
A Russian MTLB with an anti-missile grid. You know, when I look at this, I immediately think of the brassiers on the Russian tanks to protect them from Javelin missiles. Another armored vehicle abandoned after a failed assault. The first drone flies over the target and explodes nearby. Yeah, that happens sometimes. The second drone hits it squarely in the side. The armored personnel carrier is now on fire. For example, this is the defeat of a Russian tank by a Javelin missile. There was no detonation. Apparently, it was without ammunition. Here's another spectacular hit, but already on the Russian AFV. This is the place where Russian officers gather. It's a field command center. One missile sends 8 Russian officers straight to hell. A Russian counterattack attempt has failed. A Ukrainian FPV drone takes out an abandoned BMP-2. Cheer up, boys! They thought they had their MLRS safely hidden, but here's what happened next. The enemy's equipment was destroyed. The Gvozdika SPA did not survive an encounter with a kamikaze drone. Apparently, there were shells left in it, which led to such a huge explosion. Another Russian howitzer is headed for the dump. A tank explodes on a minefield. The camera zooms out, and we see another Russian tank standing 100 meters away from these geniuses. Idiots! What did you expect? Another example of complete idiocy. A tank is driving along a road, on which there are already 3 destroyed tanks. It passes the first tank, almost rounds the second, and boom! The tank hits mines, followed by another tank and an AFV. Interesting way of clearing a path. This tank is caught in the crosshairs of a Javelin. The missile has already been fired at the target. No armor, much less Russian armor, is capable of resisting an American ATGM. But that wasn't the end of it either. 2 BMPs were sent to their doom by the Russian generals. But they couldn't even make it to the battlefield. The first one gets torn apart. The second BMP turns around. Maybe they changed their minds about going to die. But even here, they were disappointed. 2-0 in favor of the Ukrainian mines. The Russians have concentrated their efforts in eastern Ukraine, and we will see how this turns out in the coming months. The Zaporizhzhia region. Here, the soldiers of the Special Operations Forces distinguished themselves well. They destroyed $25 million worth of Russian equipment with the help of HIMARS. Thus, Uragan, Grad, and Sointsepiok MLRSs were destroyed. In addition, the Ukrainians destroyed a rare and expensive radar system, Zoo Park. A Shark UAV plus M142 HIMARS. Let's take a look at the workings of this deadly bundle. The drone is tracking Russian troops' locations. Surveillance begins. When several more vehicles arrive, the Ukrainians realize it's time to act. Nice work. What's this? Another attempt to break through the Ukrainians' defenses? The tank hits the mines and explodes. What a beautiful fireworks display. And this footage shows a whole dump of destroyed Russian vehicles. One APC with Russian paratroopers trying to push the second, and both explode on mines. You think that's going to stop the Russians? They keep driving forward and keep getting blown up by mines. This looks tougher than the Russians' failure in Ugledar. Look how beautifully this Russian howitzer exploded. And this armored personnel carrier left on the side of the road? These guys tried to escape from pursuit, but it didn't work. Russian howitzers got hit too. The SBU is snapping at the Russian army like seeds. All they need is targets and drones. Another victim of American HIMARS. The Hyacinth self-propelled artillery was destroyed by a precision missile hit. Oh, what do we have here? The Strela 10 is an important and rare system. The kamikaze drone easily takes out the Russian hardware. There are Russian military personnel traveling in this car. These are not ordinary soldiers, but officers. In a moment, a Ukrainian drone is conducting an outreach. Our best wishes to the recently departed. There's a Russian car hiding in these bushes. Well, if the drones detected it, it's a goner. The car's been hit. Nighty-night. And here's how the K2 battalion caught Russian terrorists in a car while it was moving. Two operators work together. One performs reconnaissance and observes the moving target, while the other controls the kamikaze drone and directs it on the first operator's tip. The drone crashes precisely into the windshield of the car and sends the driver to hell. Hey Russians, how's the supply situation with the forward units? Not so good. It burns beautifully. Those bunny boys got what they deserved. A drone crashes into the roof of a car and explodes. Do you think these Russians have gotten good? Another abandoned Russian tank.
Yeah.
A thermobaric grenade flies exactly into the hole.
Football.
The shells
Yeah.
ignite and destroy the tank. The turret is thrown back dozens of meters. The pieces of the tank are scattered all around. And in the place of the tank, a smoldering crater. Some more precise work of the Ukrainian operator. The drone starts dropping grenade after grenade on the abandoned tank. The Russian armor succumbs to the onslaught. The tank catches fire and explodes. Pieces of scrap metal are all that's left of it. Every day, soldiers from the 103rd Brigade show excellent results. This time, they destroyed a BRDM, an off-road vehicle, and a Russian AFV. Great work, guys. Don't stop. The 128th Brigade helped this BMP decompose into molecules. An armored recovery vehicle tows a damaged Russian tank. An FPV drone crashes into the armored vehicle and causes a massive fire. A Russian SPA, I think this one's an Akatsia. The Ukrainian kamikaze drone was able to cover a distance of more than 15 kilometers and hit the terrorists' cannon. To consolidate the result, the Ukrainians sent another drone. There is another tank nearby. The drone drops a few grenades on it. The results are immediate. Nice work. Ukrainians discovered a Russian cargo truck. A decision is made to destroy the target. A drone with explosives returns at night. The first two drops were past the target, but the third explosive hits the truck exactly. Another peon. Aerial reconnaissance first locates the target and observes it. HIMARS calculations assign coordinates. When the SPA stops, the American monster releases a missile. 100% accuracy, the artillery is destroyed. This video shows the perfect performance of a 155mm smart projectile. Pay attention to the accuracy. You can clearly see the trajectory of the projectile in these shots. Will this AFV be helped by a brassiere for defense against drones? Place your bets. The second drone was already headed for the Russian trough. Bottom line, the net did not help the two drones hit the target. Another Zhetel electronic warfare station. Ukrainian artillery makes several accurate shots and destroys the station. The tank you saw at the beginning didn't stop and moved on. That's the fate that awaited him. And this is how the counterattack of the Russian armored group ended. 3 tanks and 3 AFVs are trying to get behind the Ukrainians. Aerial reconnaissance detects them in time. The Ukrainian artillery begins to make heavy blows to the terrorists. One of the shells exactly hits a tank. The result? 2 tanks and 1 AFV were destroyed. The other equipment manages to escape. The assault was a failure. An abandoned T-72. The Ukrainians hit the open hatch with an accurate drop. The tank is destroyed. Nearby stands a hit AFV. An accurate hit in the open hatch. The occupant's equipment is destroyed. Did you know that an FPV kamikaze drone can be equipped with a system to drop grenades? That's exactly what you're seeing right now. An FPV drone destroys a Russian tank by precisely throwing a grenade into the open hatch. A Russian MTLB. Note the crates with ammunition on it. Naturally, one grenade will turn the armored personnel carrier into a pile of scrap metal. This Russian meat pot didn't survive a hit from a ram shell. Enjoy this footage. Another Muram. This time mounted not on a building, but on a small mountain. The Ukrainians are sending in a kamikaze drone. Surveillance is over. Here's how the delivery to the occupier's door works. The cameraman masterfully flies into the inside of a Russian dugout. Now that's professionalism. I'm impressed. Legendary Ukrainian warrior Madyar and his work. This video footage shows a Russian tank that tried to play spunky with the Ukrainians, but got burned in the process. Here's how it went down. 20 seconds after the hit, the Russians tried to escape. But it was too late. The second drone is on its way. After that second hit, the tank managed to drive around a bit. Will there be a third drone? It's coming. Ba-boom! The tank catches fire and explodes. 3 $400 drones destroyed a $3 million tank. The Russians thought their tank was safely hidden. The drone turns the tank into a pile of burning junk. By the way, here is another angle of this situation. It can be seen that the tank was hit beforehand. The tank released heat traps and fired at the Ukrainian positions from where the missile hit it. And what happened next, you have already seen. Kamikaze drones are one of the most effective tools used in stopping the Russian offensive. After the next episode, you're going to see just that. The drone continues video recording. At the crossroads, we can see more equipment being hit. 2 more tanks. The second direction of impact. 2 blown up tanks. I think that's the turret of a T-90M tank. I kind of lost count. An armored personnel carrier, and another tank. And that's not all. Another T-90M? The video cuts out. Z terrorists are forbidden to drive on Ukrainian roads. Let's see what payback awaits them. An AFV blows up, hitting some mines. So, are these losers going to make it to their destination without incident? Of course not. Time to finish off the abandoned Russian vehicles. The Grad MLRS is the younger brother of the Uragan. It will be saying goodbye to life, by the way, just like the previous one. The drone followed the MLRS, which led him to a warehouse with rockets. Another Grad incoming, apparently to load the missiles. The HIMARS missile makes a change in their plans. 2 MLRS and the missile depot are destroyed. The AFV fires on Ukrainian positions. Naturally, nothing good comes of this endeavor. The first ATGM missile hits the armored personnel carrier, followed by the second missile. The assault is over. Here's another spectacular hit, but already on the Russian AFV. There's a Russian tank on your screens. The drone drops the grenade perfectly. Now, all the work is behind the fire. The gunpowder and ammunition heats up rapidly. Look at those flames. The tank is destroyed. An abandoned T-72. The Ukrainians hit the open hatch with an accurate drop. The tank is destroyed. Nearby stands a hit AFV. An accurate hit in the open hatch. The occupant's equipment is destroyed. And this place has already been nicknamed the Road of Death by the Russians. And this is what happens to Russian trucks in this place on a regular basis. 2 more Russian bogatirs were sent to hell by the Ukrainians. This is what happens when you come to a foreign land to kill and plunder. Why didn't the Russians even try to hide this car? Now, the Russians have one less trough. 2 more SPAs. These are Nona S. They are used to stop advancing troops. Check out the HIMARS rockets landing on them from the sky. The neighboring UAS was destroyed the same way. Another tank. They didn't even try to hide it this time. Why did they leave this pot behind? The tank's hit. That clunker burned to the ground too. The drone hit the tank between the turret and the fuel tanks. The Ukrainians watched this trough burn for several hours. In this attack, the Russians lose 5 armored fighting vehicles and 2 tanks. These paratroopers don't draw conclusions either. Aren't they embarrassed by 2 armored personnel carriers being destroyed? The AFV drops off the paratroopers and leaves. Artillery strikes the militants with precision. The group of terrorists have been destroyed. The shell explodes nearby. Shrapnel penetrates the missiles, and detonation occurs. The total cost of Russian losses is anywhere from $400 million to $1.2 billion. This tank continued on after its column was smashed. A kamikaze drone hits a target in the engine compartment and sets the tank on fire. Now, this tank has been destroyed as well. A Russian tank against a drone with explosives. The Ukrainian operator masterfully drops a bomb into an open hatch, and now, enjoy the fireworks. No matter how hard the Russians try, they have given the world a lot of beautiful footage of their equipment burning and exploding these days. Also, they've accomplished nothing. These Russians thought they were able to get away from an encounter with a Ukrainian drone. And they didn't. The second drone hits the AFV exactly in the side. I wonder how the crew is doing. Another failure. The AFV miraculously manages to escape and is not destroyed. The fate of the tank was much sadder. It hit a mine and burst into flames. And this is all that's left of it. A drone detects a Grad MLRS. If only the Russians knew what was about to happen. Boom! Another target hit by American HIMARS. A Russian howitzer can't survive an encounter with an American monster. The hit causes the ammunition to detonate. But that's not all of the HIMARS footage. Trust me, there's a lot more exciting stuff waiting for you in this story. A bit of humor from the Ukrainians. A Russian tank is shelling positions. A drone comes up from behind and delivers a fatal blow. The terrorists are destroyed. These videos of drone strikes will delight you as well. An AFU drone arrives with a gift to a place with an abandoned Russian armored personnel carrier. A few grenades, and the APC is engulfed in flames. Such assaults often result in videos like this one. I have hidden most of the footage, as it can shock a sensitive viewer. By the way, part of the armored group that retreated not very far, and was completely destroyed by Ukrainian artillerymen. The Ukrainians are using FPV drones to destroy some of the equipment. This leads to explosions like this. In general, it looks very cinematic and juicy. Now, the Ukrainians send a second drone to finish off the damaged tank. Bottom line, the Russian junk is now destroyed. Another assault. A Russian tank comes close to the Ukrainians and shoots at them. A kamikaze drone stings the tank in the engine compartment. He can't get away. Another tank comes to the rescue, and the shooting continues. The drone catches up with this target as well. The outskirts of Bakhmut. The Russians are driving their junk somewhere. A kamikaze drone crashes into the back of a Russian tank. The crew begins to fry. Goodbye, b****s. Two Russian tanks decided to go on the attack. One to cover, the other to attack. Something didn't go according to plan. First, the covering tank gets hit in the face by an ATGM missile. That takes him out of the game. The second tank stubbornly continues to drive across the field. Deadly mistake. A missile flies into the side of the tank, and then a beautiful fireworks display begins. At first glance, it may seem that the Ukrainians are wasting grenades on this destroyed vehicle. But this is not the case. There is a mine-clearing machine on it, and it is this one that needs to be taken care of. The second grenade the Ukrainians drop on the hoses filled with explosives. Fire and explosions. We've got some more very interesting episodes for you as well. A Russian tank ran over mines and found itself in a very bad situation. Ukrainians, using ATGMs, kill the immobilized Russian vehicle. This Russian tank made a beautiful boom near Marinka. This Russian meat pot didn't survive a hit from a ram shell. Enjoy this footage. One more try. The Russian tank hits mines, and everything ends even more dramatically. You can see torn off parts of the tank flying out of the smoke. The Russians have stationed their AFVs in this small town. It's time to turn them into scrap metal. The first target is hit. It's now smoking. The second drone hits another AFV parked outside a neighboring building. Alright, let's move on. The third drone dives right into the first trough. Turns out there's another armored personnel carrier hidden nearby. The fourth drone hits it too. All three targets have been destroyed. Disguise it or don't disguise it. It won't work. Boom! We got a hit. Another rare tulpan destroyed by a kamikaze drone. It must have been full of ammunition because it exploded with great force. Russian generals are competing to see who can destroy more of their army's personnel and equipment. This entire Russian offensive is pure madness. Another assault. A Russian tank comes close to the Ukrainians and shoots at them. A kamikaze drone stings the tank in the engine compartment. He can't get away. Another tank comes to the rescue, and the shooting continues. The drone catches up with this target as well. Another tank was stopped on the approach to the Ukrainian positions. The Ukrainians finish it off using the drone. If any of the tanks survived these assaults, the Russians tried to hide them in the nearby forest. But even this did not save them. The drone penetrates the thin armor of the tank's turret and ignites the gunpowder. The ammunition is also in the tank, and it's a matter of time before a massive explosion occurs. After replacing the battery, the drone returns and observes this picture. The Russian tank was stopped by a mine. The Ukrainian cameraman, taking advantage of the moment, starts dropping grenades on the Russian trough. One of the grenades ricochets into the open hatch. The powders ignite, and a beautiful fireworks display begins. When the drone returns to the tank again, there is a black spot and a crater in its place. Parts of the tank are scattered all around. It's about to be bada boom! A kamikaze drone helped a Russian T-90 split it into molecules. A Russian tank with an anti-mine trawl. It's hard to say what stopped it specifically, but it was finished off by a kamikaze drone. A Russian tank. The inscription Zov can be seen on the turret. A kamikaze drone successfully hits the target. You want some action? Come and get some! An FPV drone first hits Russian artillery Masta S. Next, another drone flies in. Its strike is fatal for the SPA. A tremendous explosion. Russian artillerymen, how you doing? A drone dives into the front of an armored personnel carrier. Now this Russian junk is ready to be scrapped. A Kadyrov's Lynx armored vehicle. Well, it's time to teach you a lesson. Too bad those bastards weren't in the car. But that's not all. Another howitzer. Kaboom! One drone isn't enough? I don't think this howitzer's gonna fire anymore. Nice work! Nothing is as satisfying as the arrival of a HIMARS missile at a rare target. The footage here shows a HIMARS missile hitting a Tulpan mortar. Bye-bye! A drone detects a Russian truck with ammunition and a Masta B howitzer. The truck leaves the firing position in time. HIMARS destroy the Russian gun with a precise shot. And this is a T-72B3 with a mine trawl. It burns just as well. How about this beautiful shot of a smoking Russian AFV after meeting the hospitable Ukrainians? Another armored personnel carrier burns during a failed attack. Naturally, it was not without epic explosions. This is how beautifully the Russian AFV turned into scrap metal. Another example of complete idiocy. A tank is driving along a road, on which there are already 3 destroyed tanks. It passes the first tank, almost rounds the second, and boom! The tank hits mines, followed by another tank and an AFV. Interesting way of clearing a path. The infantry are finished off by the FPV drones. Just as the Russian tank crosses the landing, a kamikaze drone crashes into it. It punctures the external fuel tanks. The tank stops and becomes an easy target for Ukrainian artillery. But the Russians don't give up and run into a minefield. They lose another tank. Ukrainian precision artillery fires on the stopped target. Realizing that things are not going well, the Russians decide to retreat, but even here they fail. In this attack, the Russians lose 5 armored fighting vehicles and 2 tanks. Another victim. A Russian tank goes on a combat mission. The crew does not know what fate awaits them. The first Ukrainian drone stops the tank, followed by a second drone. There's the penetration. Goodbye, Russian terrorist tankers. Here's a funny situation. Russians on a BMP thought to escape from pursuit of a Ukrainian kamikaze drone. 1-0 in favor of the Ukrainians. Ukrainians have found an engineering demining vehicle UR-77. It was abandoned due to malfunctions. The Ukrainians use a kamikaze drone to destroy a unique engineering vehicle left behind by the Russians. One hit causes a fire, and now the fire will do the rest of the work. Kaboom! It's beautiful. Another video of a broken Russian convoy. There are several tanks in this video, including a T-90M. Another Russian tank after an unsuccessful attack. Not a tank, rather, but what's left of it. Abandoned Russian equipment must be destroyed. Kamikaze drones are excellent at this task. Look how this drone neatly flies inside the AFV. Nice work. A Russian tank against a drone with explosives. The Ukrainian operator masterfully drops a bomb into an open hatch. And now, enjoy the fireworks. And so the Russian generals are sending another batch of meat to capture Ukrainian positions. Notice how many there are. But even here, the Russians are defeated. The Ukrainians simply shot up this Russian column with artillery, ATGMs, and drones. And this explosion is truly one of the best that I've seen. For example, this is the defeat of a Russian tank by a Javelin missile. There was no detonation. Apparently, it was without ammunition. A tank duel at a distance of no more than 10 meters. This is a Ukrainian tank, and on the other side are Russian terrorists. The Ukrainians load another shell and shoot at the Russian tank once again. Let's look from a different angle. We see the smoke after the first hit. The Russian tank is torn from the shot at point-blank range. Such episodes deserve separate likes and comments. And this is the fight against the logistics of Russian terrorists. A massive explosion of a field depot with ammunition. One grenade was enough to deprive the Russians of a weak supply of ammunition. A drone throws a grenade into the hatch of an abandoned tank. Explosion, fire, and detonation. It's a Nona S, and it was preventing Ukrainian infantry from advancing. Well, for every bad Russian, the Ukrainians have an FPV drone. Kaboom! The ammunition ignites instantly. The mortar is blown to bits. Let's take a look at this. The Russians are constantly changing positions. The Ukrainians have to watch and wait. Finally, they manage to catch the entire air defense battery and hit the launchers, the radar station, and the command center all at the same time. This is the radar station. It's damaged, and the fuel tanker is leaking fuel. And in this footage, the launcher and loader are completely destroyed. Nice operation. Shark drones continue to hunt the Russians along the entire front line, and the HIMARS make it easy to neutralize detected targets. With the first missile, the Ukrainians destroy a BM-21 Grad. The second missile hits the BM-27 Uragan. The third lucky target is the crew and howitzer, Hyacinth B. And to make the Russians completely lulled, HIMARS strikes a logistics center. Nice work. This Russian AFV is trying to slip through, but once again, something goes wrong. The kamikaze drone has cooled the Russians' ardor. If any of the tanks survived these assaults, the Russians tried to hide them in the nearby forest. But even this did not save them. The drone penetrates the thin armor of the tank's turret and ignites the gunpowder. The ammunition is also in the tank, and it's a matter of time before a massive explosion occurs. After replacing the battery, the drone returns and observes this picture. An armored personnel carrier leaves its position in the Kremina forest area. The Russians still have no idea that they are minutes away from... A miracle happens. God gave the Russians a second chance, because the drone gets stuck in the brushwood and does not explode. Those who are smarter immediately begin to jump out of the armored vehicle. When the technique stops, the second drone arrives and finishes the task. To this MTLB, the polite Ukrainians hinted, "Russia, you don't belong here." The Uragan MLRS is a perfect target for American missiles. The Peon MLRS, your days are numbered. And these are 2 fuel tankers and a Russian pickup truck. One more hit and a beautiful fire. 9 trucks, 2 HIMARS missiles turn all of these vehicles into a pile of scrap metal. Means of electromagnetic warfare. 1, 2, target destroyed. A trick for vaporizing Russian bastards. The Tor-1M Sam and the entire crew are about to meet the HIMARS missile. Kaboom! Goodbye. Uncle HIMARS checked in on these Russians as well. How are you guys feeling? Nothing hurts, does it? A Russian MTLB. Note the crates with ammunition on it. Naturally, one grenade will turn the armored personnel carrier into a pile of scrap metal. A Grad MLRS hits the UAV's lens. Russians, pack your bags. Target has been eliminated. This drone drops a grenade and hits the open hatch. What a heartwarming video of a terrorist tank on fire. A beautiful fire show from a Russian BMD. The turret is torn off and thrown up to dozens of meters. An abandoned Russian BMP-1. The armored vehicle was unable to continue due to a mine explosion. An FPV drone flies inside and sets fire to the abandoned junk. Look how beautifully the armored personnel carrier burns. Who's this here? Another lost Russian T-90. The first drone dives into the turret. Looks like we need another strike. The Ukrainians launch a second drone. The operator aims it at the tank's engine. Target destroyed. Here we see a Russian tank that has been hit. There's no way for the Ukrainians to take it. So they use a kamikaze drone. It penetrates the armor and gets to the ammunition. Nice explosion! A Ukrainian drone destroys a Russian BMP on the second attempt. A very beautiful detonation. Excellent work. Another abandoned armored personnel carrier. The Ukrainians fill it with explosives and blow it up. The armored vehicle is no more.